welcome everyone to a special day and a special adventure on Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and today's guest is someone I am really excited to meet and talk with, and I think you all will be as well. We were kind of chit chatting a little bit before, and I want to give a shout out to JV Noseworthy. She's the one with NL Podcast. I've been on her show. She's the one who recommended this guest. And so thank you to her. And with that being said, I am now going to turn it over to my guest so that she can introduce herself and give a little bit of background to what she does. So I'm going to turn it over to the one, the only experience extraordinaire, Jan Hann.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you for having me on your show. So a little bit of my background is when I started at the age of 18, I live in the UK. I started in London it was fashion, and it was with Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, and it was with Ladybird, children's coats. I was a designer for those. I was one of the illustrators for Vogue, and it lasted 11 years. The best bit of being in London was I was opposite the British Museum. And I used to spend every Sunday afternoon in there. And the thing that caught my eye most of all was the Egyptian mummies. And I couldn't understand why they had to dress them all up like that. And something was going on. And I suddenly realized that they expected us to have life after death. And from that point on, I was really curious as to how that would happen. That really started it off for me. I was in London for about 11 years, and then I got married, and we moved up to Herefordshire, where I am now. Herefordshire is a beautiful rural county in sort of in the West Midlands, and this is where my experience took place. And I really feel that it was meant for me to move here so that this experience could happen. And so I'm going to start now with a little bit. So from the very beginning, the scenery took my breath away. I felt privileged to live here. It was a patchwork of natural beauty, green hills and golden valleys, wild flowers and healing herbs, luscious fruits and berries, a land of milk and honey. It was here in this mythical landscape that my brush with immortality began. At this juncture in my life, I wanted to ask God what his plan is for humanity. After all, don't we all reach a moment where we ask, why are we here? I reflected on a time when the rain poured into my heart without pause. I thought of the homeless, the suffering, and the anguish. And then I heard of a nuclear war. On this particular evening, Ian had the television on. A speaker was solemnly instructing viewers, take out the doors and prop them against the walls. This will help prevent them from falling on you. This was the advice that was given to us to prepare for a nuclear war. I asked Ian if it was some joke, and he said quietly, no. That night I didn't sleep. In fact, it was for 3 nights that I stayed awake, gripped by fear, for my daughters, for all of us. Then I saw an article about underground shelters that were fully equipped with survival kits for 3 months. Nearly £10,000, but no need to resurface for weeks. That was it. My answer is that we need to survive. I couldn't wait to tell Ian. He agreed. He said we had just enough money to build the shelter beneath the back garden. That night I slept well for the first half, and then a troubling thought woke me. What will happen when we resurface? How many others will be alive? Will the world still be habitable or poisoned? And once again I was in despair. I got angry. I had brought my daughters into this world under God's love and protection. It felt like my sacred duty to give them a safe, loving start to life. As a mother, I would do anything to keep them from harm. But I was stunned. Why wasn't God doing anything to prevent humanity from self-destruction? I wrestled with God for days and nights, asking, how can a loving, caring God allow this? Why, God, are you permitting such things? Where are you in all of this? Little did I realize that this wrestling match was to be the beginning of an immense affair with God. It lasted 3 years, although my family would say it has never truly ended. A few days later, it was Tuesday the 2nd of March 1982 at precisely 10:45 p.m. I was driving along a narrow country road in Herefordshire with my 2 young daughters in the back seat, supposedly asleep. As I drove down this lane, my eldest daughter began talking to me. What comes after 20, Mummy? I was puzzled. Do you mean 20, sweetheart, or 19? She shook her head. It looks like this, she said, tracing an invisible shape in the air. I turned slightly to see her gesture more clearly, and it was precisely at that curve that something utterly bizarre caught my eye. To the left of the curve is a stile leading into a vast field bordered by tall bushes. To the right is the lane we were driving on, which stretches approximately 352 yards or 0.32 kilometers. At the end of the lane, a main road branches off, leading to the International Communications Satellite Station in Herefordshire. Now, as I turned onto the lane, I spotted some weird lights hovering above the ground. They are clustered together in the front left of the corner of the field, suspended eerily in space. I did do a picture at the time after I got back, and this is roughly what I wrote down. So there they are, they're just scattered like that in the middle of the field. Well, actually to the front left corner of the field, suspended eerily in place. How do I know they were watching something on the main road, or perhaps far beyond towards the satellite station? I can't say, but the feeling was overwhelming. These lights weren't random, they were aware. Suddenly, the lights turned and sped towards us. It took them 3 to 5 seconds to cross the diagonal stretch of the field, roughly 440 yards. Even at 5 seconds, their velocity was around 180 miles an hour. And that's going some, isn't it?
That is.
These intelligent lights came across in a cluster, yet they were separate entities. This is the amazing thing. Their cluster was staggered, as if their speeds varied. Here they are, alongside the hedge that separated us from the field. Spontaneously, as if they'd spoken with each other, they spread out into a long line without bumping into each other. And this is the other one. If you can see there that they have eyes. The eyes were as big as I would say car lights. And the strangest thing was that between the eyes and going down, and which seemed to be caring for those eyes, is sort of a long stem which was waving. It wasn't stiff. It was waving with the wind or the speed, and they were about 6 to 8 foot above the ground, and they were dead up against the side of the hedge, which I was driving along the lane, and there was nothing else between us but the hedge. And they were about 3 meters away from me. That was all. And the lane was quite long. So there was a patter, and there was raindrops that tapped against the car's window. I couldn't understand. It wasn't raining. And then when they started to go in this line, and they're so close, it seemed as if it was misty because it was March the 2nd, and it was probably cold, but I had my windows closed in the car. But I wondered if it was the heat that is in there that turned, and maybe the heat more like because they rushed across this field at that speed, that had turned into rain. Maybe it was steam, because they seemed very misty as they were coming over. A mist rolled in with these lights, shrouding the lane in a hazy, dreamlike atmosphere. The lights, there were about 6 of them. They were now travelling alongside us, just 3 to 4 meters between us, hovering 6 to 8 foot above the ground. Each entity was comprised of 2 they were really bright white circular lights, approximately the size of a car's headlight, joined by a glowing fuzzy stem resembling vapor or plasma. The stems pulsed and swayed, not rigid but alive with energy. They were there, peering straight in at us, inquisitive beings with glowing eyes, and despite the shock, I couldn't feel fear. Their presence was almost hypnotic. I sensed no menace, only gentle, intelligent curiosity. I've always wondered why that was, because when I think about it, and when I see sort of like, pictures of them being that close and remembering how close, I can't understand why I sort of didn't stop the car in shock. I was in shock. That's probably what it was, a hypnotic shock. We rolled down.
Jan, I was going to say, it could also be their energy being a loving, calm energy may have just been around you, and so you felt no need to be afraid. So that may be why you didn't react, is you weren't getting that kind of energy from them.
Absolutely, I think that's right, Michael. I think that they had done something to me that with their energy that was making me calm and not to worry. And in fact, we rolled down the lane in a parallel line with my head turned towards them. When we reached the end, I turned left onto the main road. But moments before, a flash burst from the field centre. Then another two explosions of light illuminated the entire field, and just like that, they were gone. I got the feeling when they were actually looking in at me, they were so close that, and it was also this fuzziness. That probably, if it weren't fuzzy, I probably would have got more shocked seeing them, so close and so clear. But it was more, to me, I think it was like we were on the same wavelength, but their power was far greater than mine. And they had got into my aura space. And that was how they were saying these words, as if they were so close and on the same wavelength, but more powerful, as if to say, don't worry, we're just curious, that's all. After seeing the girls in bed when we got back, I drew a picture of them, which is what you've seen, and then I rang the police. Look, love, the officer said, we got enough trouble with the natural, let alone the supernatural. Try the airbase. They might be able to help you. The next day, Ian and I visited the airbase, as they said. However, we were informed that it had been out of service for a considerable time. The officer's response was, the police always send people here. Same story, time and time again. On the way home, we returned to the field hoping to find evidence of what had happened. However, there were no scorch marks, nothing strange, except in the centre of the field, there was a small pool of water where the flashes had burst. Nevertheless, what had unsettled me the most wasn't just the spectacle, it was how personal it felt. They weren't passive lights, they were interacting with me, and they had stunned me, and I had felt numb for the next few days. People were telling me it was probably tractors, which is, we have loads of tractors here, but at that time of night, it's that speed, 180 miles going across the field. No way, that wasn't right. Ball lightning, they said, maybe it's ball lightning and swamp gas, but none of those fit. I mean, ball lightning, the real ball lightning, that wouldn't have stopped it there. It would have gone straight through the hedge, really. So, personally, then, I just want to say this after that, is that I know that people call them sometimes aliens, UFOs, or whatever. I will say, I had never heard of such a thing, never even known about them. I would say in the country, complete. They don't really want us to know much about that sort of stuff. But in this county that I'm in, it's very antiquated. That's why it's so pretty. But at the same time, this sort of thing is ush, don't sort of, oh, you're all right, and you lose your friends if you're not careful. But I want to say that I never found any fit. I never felt frightened of them. And I've never heard, now I've started to go down that road and done quite a bit of research, I will say that I haven't heard of any of them shooting anybody. I haven't heard them stabbing anybody. I haven't tripped anybody up. I haven't even heard of anybody them being rude to anybody, really. Okay, I think I had got an electric shock, but I just think that is part of them, really. That probably they didn't really mean to do that or understand. What do you think?
I think it's incredible that you talk about, like, it had that sensation of raining underneath it, and I find myself thinking, they use different propulsion systems, like natural systems, where we're using synthetic or, you know, combustion systems. And so I'm wondering if that like rain effect of what you were experiencing with the cars was the effect of their propulsion unit mixing with the air, and that water coming down is what was keeping them in the air. And so because we honestly we don't know how their ships operate, and so that's the first time I've ever heard of water being underneath it. And I'm also, thinking too of the same notion of, every morning we talk about dew on the ground, and we write it off as, oh, it's the morning dew. Could it have been, we got visited and they're watering the ground, and it's like a side effect of their visit is they're helping our planet by bringing water where there's no water. And and so I started thinking about little things like that. And I will say though, when you say like you had no fear with them, and you had the little bit of electric shock, my experience has been when I feel them around, like extraterrestrial or star beings, whatever you want to call them, is there is a calming, serene kind of like just no emotion, in the aspect of there's no fear, but there's no worry either. It's like you're just are in the moment. And so I think that's really cool that you were able to experience that. And so I am like loving this story because it's like there's so many like aspects to it that I'm like, this is unheard of. I've never heard that before, but that is really cool. And now I want to figure out, what could be causing that.
That's right. Well, I will say I have found out in the last few days that just not too far away from this particular location that I saw them is a place called the Weir Garden. And in this Weir Garden, it's got a well, it's got a stream, it's got underground passageways that lead to the well. The well has got bricks around the top, and there's 8 of them, which means rebirth. And they also found what they call the magician, I think it is, the wizard or magician's chair in there. And the other thing that the archaeologists have found in there is there's a lot of what they call eye treatment things that they've discovered. And I think eye healing, this is something they used to do, is what I've been doing all this research, healing. So rituals going on there. And a well, that is you go down to die and then you come up, the well, and a magic chair or a magician. That to me are these things that I see, which I'm going to call Seraphim in a minute or now, are they linked? Are they still, were they happening all those years ago? Apparently it was taken over by somebody 100 odd years, because it's a beautiful place. It's full of trees, bushes and gardens and also all very sort of private. And I just think there's they definitely, well, they told me a few days ago that I asked them some questions, and they said, we have some really, really weird things happening here. Oh, I said, can I talk to you about it? I said, can I come and listen to it? And they said, yeah, sure. You come. So I've got a booking for them in between 20th and 24th. I'm going to go back there and listen to what happens there, because there may be a link between what I saw and those. that is still happening today, isn't it, really? That they thought, it's just the gardens, really. So anyway, when I got home, for the next few days, I felt like I was in an electric cage at home. Every time I put my hand over radios that got batteries in them, they would come on. When I take my hands off, away from them, it would go off. I didn't have to touch them, just go over the top and they would come on. All sorts of things. My hair would keep standing on end like a brush cut. And lots of things really that were happening that were really strange. It was telling me that I had a link, if you like, with something like an electric shock. So I will tell you that after my intense pleas with help for God, I had seen those lights, extraordinary beings. I had asked God what he would do about all these dreadful things. And then I felt shame and guilt because I had questioned God. Here I was after, as though there was something more profound. My energy was completely drained and my confidence had slipped away. Yet a strange longing was blooming within me. And all I could think about was religion. I asked God, where do I go from here? Which religion is the right one? Which is the route? And there I stood once again, alone with pain in my heart. Surely something has gone wrong. I whispered in my mind, God, where are you in all of this? Which religion is the right one? If I'm meant to follow a path, please show me. I sent this appeal upward for several days and nights. Where are you, God? On this particular morning, with my hand on my heart, I stood at the kitchen window. With trembling sincerity, I held out my arms and offered myself as a sacrifice to God. I prayed with urgency by knocking. You can say we can knock the door and it will be opened, I said aloud. Well, dearest God, I'm knocking. I cannot knock any louder. To whom do I go? And to which church should I attend? Suddenly, a reply came instantaneously. A distinct male answered, ask none of these, but follow me. And it happened to be the Lord Jesus. Now, seeing as I've been in America and in the last few weeks, March, if you like, with podcasts, I've heard of Chris Bledsoe. Have you heard of Chris Bledsoe, Michael? And he talks about the UFO of God, right? And I have got his book because it just seems he's got a picture of perhaps a Virgin Mary on the front or a bit of a man as well. And I thought, is it something like mine? And sure enough, in his book, he does mention like a repentance with the lady, he calls her, which is a virgin lady. Well, mine was just the same, and mine was with Jesus. So I guess he's probably Catholic, and I come from a Christianity stock, if you like, but I don't go anymore to the churches because I now realize that they're all man-made, and there's when anything is man-made, you won't get to the root. Suddenly I was startled and I said, who is there? Again I heard the same voice reply, I am the Lord Jesus, trust in me and I will show you the way. I was terrified. Jesus had always been my very best friend since childhood, a relationship I'd hoped would last forever, but never before had he spoken to me. No inner voice had ever addressed me directly like this before. So I was petrified, cautious, and afraid of being misled. My first instinct was to hold myself in constant prayer, like breathing, and that seemed to ignite a turning point. I poured everything I had into my prayer. I looking up at the sky from the kitchen window with my arms wide open, and I spoke aloud. This is basically what I hear that Chris Bledsoe has done, and this is in the last few weeks. I've heard about this, and I'm astonished. That what it's doing for me, it's making me realize that these things are real. They were, this is what the UK have been telling me, things like you need to have your medication, love, and all that sort of stuff. And have you been to the doctors lately? And all these things. And that's why it's taken me so long to get the courage to write it down. But in my book, or in Chris Bledsoe's, he says that the lady told him to keep going and I think basically let it out. Well, I was told all the time, write it down and let it out. Write it down and let it out. And I did everything that was happening, and it was 3 years. And so, dearest God, take me, I had spoken to him, take me, all of me, use me as you will. And all I ask for in return, dearest God, is to give me back just that little piece that knows that you are there. And if you will it, dearest God, I will offer it to others so they too may share in it, but only if you will it and not of my own accord. Perhaps it was a rawness with which I prayed, desperate and devoted. Immediately, something spontaneously happened. It was as though I had touched a divine switch, because at once there came a loud swirl, repent, in my ears. And at that exact moment, a pressure bore down on the top of my head. I was driven down until I lay flat on the floor. And once again, I think that's what happened to Chris Bledsoe. I had surrendered to this invisible force. I was stunned and completely overcome. There was an awareness of something else, something unseen, powerful, and so close. And I sobbed for begging forgiveness for everything I had ever done wrong. I don't know how long I stayed down there, probably a long time, but face down on the floor. But then I felt a warm glow on my head sometime later. The awesome holy other, because that's what it's called, the holy other in religion. It's the awesome other, or the holy other, was not forcing me down anymore. Instead, I was being drawn up by a magnet, pulling at the top of my head steadily. I looked out of the window and there was a beautiful shimmering rainbow, and then another one appeared, and I will never forget them. This is because God's promise in the around near the Old Testament at the beginning there, a rainbow. I don't know if it's something to do with Noah's Ark and all the rest of it, but it's. I know that rainbows, if they're double, and to see a rainbow, it's a God's promise, and I can tell you, I love Him deeply. My God is a God within. I'm not a God without, and I talk to God myself. I don't need anybody else to talk to me or to control me, to stay in a little box. I like to know what's going on right from the root and get the truth. So I want to say that my things that you saw, not only, I've just picked up my phone to show you a picture that I have in here. Which is this one. There we go. Yeah, a bit of it. So I believe that they are the Seraphins, because the Seraphins are eyes. They're all eyes, and here we go. So here, this is what I showed you. Is it there? Yeah. Can you see the same things I showed you?
You got to put it in front of your face because the screen, it doesn't. So when you're pointing it to the right, we don't see it. It's there. We go.
That's
Now
it.
we can see it.
Those are what I showed you, aren't they?
It is.
Those are what
yeah.
I showed you in the picture. Yeah. So then I moved to the next one, and somebody told me in one of the groups, that's why I like comments. Sure, it's one of these, which is thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. You can have it that way, or you can have it that way. And that is exactly, they said they thought it was just like that. And that is a painting in Utah on a cave. And it's thousands and thousands of years old. And so that's awesome, isn't it? So there's a little bit more, and then that's it. So
there we go.
There's other things there, and the strangest thing is about them is that there's birds there. Now that is really strange, because I'm going to talk about birds, but I will also say that when I look to see what this thing, because it's sort of like personal about God and creation and things like that, I looked up aliens. I couldn't really see any aliens that would fit there. These were about half a dozen sets. There's sets of eyes. And so I started looking up in a different way to do with angels. And this is a picture of about 9 different angels. And then they have the ones that come at the beginning. The ones closest to God are the cherubim and the Seraphim. The Seraphim is, a minute, I lost it there. This one, that one, because it's the only, no, yeah, that one is the Seraphim and the cherubim. The Seraphim and the cherubim, I think the cherubim is the closest to God, which means that it knows more about God and understanding. And then the Seraphim comes next, and then there's all the other ones down to the angels and things like that. So archangels, and that one, I mean, this is just an illustration from somebody that has never seen one, because other ones they do with lots of eyes, you know, and so I put it down that they are serapins, and serapins that maybe they were making a noise. Apparently they sing. Maybe that singing is humming, and that sort of thing. So this clunk click that happened on the top of my head. Also, somebody else that put a comment in one of the boxes afterwards somewhere, and they said that they had been studying this sort of stuff, and the clunk click was the start of a ritual. And then I started researching things, and I learned that the Seraphim apparently is the ascent, and the ascent, if you see Seraphim, it's the onset of an initiation ceremony that you're going to take place in. And that's exactly what happened, because the next stage is I start flying to the Great Pyramid. And the thing that I'm flying with is this thing that had landed on my head, this clunk click. It didn't want to let go, and it made me absolutely as if it's like a spider and a fly. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I had gone after I got up from the window, it was as if I was being pushed into a particular position in the kitchen, and I had to be this way and that way. And then all of a sudden, this clunk, click that went on to the top of my head, and then it started rising, and it seemed to be pulling me into two parts. And that's called the dual embodiment. And the dual embodiment is the same thing as the Ba. The Ba is the ancient Egyptian thing, which is a human being with a bird's head. And that's exactly what it felt like. If anybody was near me and listening, they would have said it was just as if a huge bird had taken me up and off. It didn't want my physical body. Oh no, I wasn't interested in the material body. It was after my energy, or your spiritual body, or whatever, electrical body. But they're all the same thing. That's what it was after. And I was left with a body, just the material body, which was just enough energy, although I was exhausted for the next 3 years, that was just telling me, keep going with your material life, your family and your work that you have to do, and just keep going. And then the other part of me is flying with this big bird. And I will tell you that it was here. This is the riding the sky. So across the ancient world, there is one symbol that appears again and again whenever human beings try to describe the soul. And that symbol is a bird. It doesn't matter where you look. Egypt, Greece, the Celts, the Norse, the Mayans, India, China, Africa, every single civilization imagine the soul as something that could rise, lift, and fly. In Egypt, the Ba, the part of the soul that carries personality, memory, and identity, was shown as a bird with a human head. The Egyptians believed the Ba could leave the body, travel between worlds, visit the living, and return at night. It was the soul in motion. Now, I never knew any of that, and I was absolutely shocked. I did look it up afterwards, and I did get in touch with I have never been physically to Giza, Egypt, or the Great Pyramid of Giza at all. But I managed to, through Facebook, ask a guide that works on with the Great Pyramid and on the Giza plateau. And he said, what had happened to you is, he said, that's the Ba. He said, where did the Ba take you? Because, it's your soul. And I said, to the Great Pyramid of Giza. And he went back on his chair, and because it was done by Zoom. And he said, wow. And that was the beginning of initiation ceremony, which took place, the oldest initiation ceremony ever. That even the priests were the only ones that used to know it, apparently. So in Greece, have you heard of Ba then, Michael?
I have, and I've actually been in the Great Pyramid in Giza and been on the plateau.
Lucky you. Did you see the same? This is the thing, you see. My daughters went to see what, was in there, and they were taken to the Great Pyramid, the Upper King's Chamber. And all the things I told her about what I was in there in my spiritual is, it was like a big bell that was knocking, bong, 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 bong. And I was shaking in there. And I don't know how, but I tried to block my ears of my spiritual body. I will tell you, it's really strange. But it was making me vibrate very much in there. But she said, no, it wasn't like that when I was in there. She said it was just hot. And I said, oh, yes. And I was really hot as well. But the strange things that happen when you're in there in your spiritual body. Well, I did the whole trip. 3 years it took me of the initiation ceremony, and that's what my book is all about. And that's what I'm going to. So I tell you, the Greece in Greece, the word is psyche, meaning soul, and butterfly or small bird. The soul was imagined as something that could slip free of the body and take wing. In the Norse myth, Odin's ravens, thought and memory, fly across the world each day and return with knowledge. It's a mythic way of describing consciousness leaving the body and returning with insight. And then it goes on and it says, Celtic tradition, birds guide souls into the other world. In Native American culture, eagles carry prayers to the Creator. In the Hindu text, the soul leaves the body like a bird escaping in a cage. In China, immortals transform into cranes to ascend to heaven. Everywhere, the same idea appears. The soul rises, the soul flies, the soul sees from above. And when you look at modern near-death experiences, people floating above their bodies, seeing themselves from above, traveling through light, you realize that the ancient symbol wasn't just poetic, it was experiential. It was human. And that's why the Egyptian bar resonates so deeply. Because when I had my experience, rising, floating, seen from, I later discovered that the Egyptians had given language to that state thousands of years ago. The bird is the bridge, and I saw the Grand Gallery in the Great Pyramid. Did you go up the Grand Gallery inside? All I saw was that I saw it was a huge bird, and I was on the on the huge bird, and I was on the bird's back. That's better. And it was taking me into the King's Chamber, and I've even done drawings as it was happening. Those things, the slots and things each side of it, in my experience, it was the bird's wings when it was up, all the wings like this, and the great step to get into the King's Chamber is the beak of the bird. And this is the real reason why it's been built, the Great Pyramid. It's our birthright. It is our inheritance, because when you're in there, you due to the structure, there is all sorts of vibrations, and the vibrations are transforming your energy into a higher energy, ready to move on in your next to another level in your life, because we don't die. Is that right, Michael? Is you agree with that?
I do, and what I find interesting, as you're talking about with the birds, is most of the Egyptian gods, you have like Ra is the head of a hawk, Horus, his son, is the head of a falcon. You
Yes.
have Thoth, which is the god of wisdom, is the egret or
Ibis.
the
Yeah.
ibis, and so most of the gods have bird aspects, and they recently did the movie Gods of Egypt or God of Egypt, and they made Horus like transform into a bird to fly around, and it was like a metallic form. But I was like, that was so cool to see them show, like, yeah, they are human form, but they're tall, but they turn into birds. And I was like, that was like an amazing thing to see, because I think that's more accurate. And when I was going into the King's Chamber, it was like, as you're saying, entering the King's Chamber, which is like the beak. I sat in I laid in the sarcophagus that's there, and everybody I was with,
Yeah.
we all had out of body experiences, and so it's like it makes sense, of how you're explaining it, like the beak, which is the breathing, the air. And so what happens when you do an out of body experience? You let go and travel like the air. And so this is like really fascinating to me. And one thing that I want to mention that I thought about in your story in the beginning, if I can take a second, when you were saying you had the electric shock feeling and then you could hear the voice, I wonder if you
Yes.
ever thought that feeling of that electric shock was your body awakening to a new
Yeah.
energy level, and that's why you could hear now the voice, is that they
Wow.
were related.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Michael. That's thank you. All more comments with helping. It is really important. It's just the experience is really now trying to understand the root of it. So that and knowing now that it's true. It is another reality. It is so exciting. I'm so pleased that the Euro-Americans are setting all these things up because it's very important. It's made, all of you are, and of course it would have to be the USA, wouldn't it really? Because you're always in the front really of everything on the globe. I love that. There's astronauts. I don't think I wanted to be with them, but I just want to know what's on the other side of the moon. It's really great, So going on then, so the next bit is, I will say that when I was in the Great Pyramid, that every stage of it is awesome. And I will say that you then realize that we have to know about the Great Pyramid. It's the temple of God, and their God, of course, is Ra, or Re, isn't it? There's the sun. And oddly enough, Jesus has a lot to do with the sun. He's always, linked with the sun. That Great Pyramid is it's God, and it's a true religion. This is a true religion that everything else is come out of and made up their own sorts of things, to for their own things really. But what upset me and made me go on this track at one time is that every time I used to ask them, what about this and that, because they have their set rituals, for different times in the year. Do they understand what they're actually telling us, really? And I asked him some of the vicar, and he said that Roy, we look in Corinthians and this and that, and I had a look, and I thought, well, what's that got to do with it? I'm no better off now. So I thought maybe this is why this happened as well. It knew I was ready to move on. I really understand what's at the root. But my book is talking about the initiation ceremony and how it happened, and quite honestly, it sits in the center of the planet, when all those thousands of years ago must be the oldest temple of God, the true God, and the true religion. And I will say, and that we don't need to forget everything else on the planet about this sort of stuff. We need to concentrate on the Great Pyramid and understand it, from the heart, from the beginning. I will say that it's smack bang in the center of the planet before the land mass, separated into continents. But it was why put it in the center of the land mass. It was meant for all of us. And I will quickly say this bit and add it in, that it is Jerusalem, I was told it's the navel of the planet, and that is where all the power comes from, apparently, and all the above and below, interact. And that also Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem has 70 meanings, which basically put them all together, and it means peace on earth. Well, that doesn't seem to be happening at the moment so far, as on this place. But I will tell you that the Great Pyramid, the church, the true temple, sitting in the center of the landmass, and the landmass is really the true Jerusalem. Everybody and every the population and everything is God's people, and it's get them all together to understand the one thing together, and then that is peace on earth, which is what's going to happen next. But the next thing I need to tell you is that we're on number 2. So on number 2, which is part 2, civilizations in stars. So the Silurian hypothesis. Have you heard that, Michael?
I've heard Solarian, but I don't know that I've heard the Solarian prophecy.
So the Silurian hypothesis is a thought experiment. This is part 2, but the other half of it won't take me that long now. Civilizations in the stars, right? So is there any civilizations in the stars? Well, the Silurian hypothesis is a thought experiment which assesses modern science's ability to detect evidence of a first advanced civilization, perhaps several millions of years ago on Earth. The word civilization refers to a stage of human social and cultural development and organization considered most advanced. The most probable clues for such a civilization could be carbon, radioactive elements, or temperature variation. The name Silurian derives from BBC science fiction series Doctor Who. Astrophysicist Adam Frank and climate scientist Gavin Schmidt proposed the Silurian hypothesis in 2018 paper exploring the possibility of detecting an advanced civilization before humans in our geological record. They argued that there has been sufficient fossil carbon to fuel an industrial civilization since the Carboniferous period, which was approximately 35 million years ago. However, direct evidence such as technological artifacts is unlikely to be found due to the rarity of fossilization and Earth's exposed surface. Instead, researchers might find indirect evidence such as climate change, sediment anomalies, or traces of nuclear waste. The hypothesis also speculates the artifacts from past civilizations could be found on the Moon and Mars, where erosion and tectonic activity are less likely to erase evidence. The concept of pre-human civilizations has been explored in popular culture, including novels, television, shows, video games, and short stories. Well, so let's take it further. And I will tell you, well, we'll take it further. What are the plausible candidates for a Silurian hypothesis world? Well, in alternate evolution projects, intelligent humanoid dinosaurs are probably the most common version of this. But what other species provide a good starting point? A preference is for it to be a branch of cephalopods, as modern octopuses are clearly intelligent, and you can also play with the rather crazy idea that the evolution from squid to octopus is compatible with a suite of genes inserted by extraterrestrial viruses. It also raises many interesting questions about underwater technology. But that's a separate issue, or is it? Now, this is where part of the initiation ceremony that takes place, because once I'm inside there, and I've been doing this, and I would say probably I've been in there about 1.5 years, at the moment, or nearly 2 years, I would think, in 2 pieces. And I was prepared for it, all the flying, and there's lots of stuff in there, learning the hieroglyphs and stuff. I was being prepared to be inside there. And I get to this place, and I will tell you that I am laying in bed. A lot of it was happening, I suppose, learning about flying and things. It was happening a lot during night time. Maybe it would come across clearer for me, these things. But I will say that at this particular time, I was in bed, and that all of a sudden, there's like a big, as if I'm in the pictures, a big cinema screen in front of me. And I look, and I'm still laying down. And as I'm laying down, I see a fish. So they said, or is it separate issue? Well, or is it? And this fish is a big whale, and it comes up. And it's in the sea, and it comes up high above the sea, and then it goes back down again. And then I notice that there's all these buildings, houses in front, and there's a coast, and they're all on the coast. And so I'm looking at this sea, which is with the coast and the houses in front of me. And then it comes up again, but this time it's a dolphin. Now, dolphins are extremely intelligent. Apparently, they're the most intelligent things on the planet. And it comes up, and then it comes down on the other side, and then it turns, and it starts coming towards me. And I thought, wow, it came out of the screen, and it's coming out through these houses, and coming up. And it touched my foot on the outside, and it was really cold. And as it came up my left leg, and it came up right up to my waist. Now, I have heard another person was talking since in the last few weeks, but she was in bed, and she said that there was this lovely feeling, and it was something that was cold and wet, that it came up her side, side of her, but she said thigh. Well, I say waist, and up to the waist, and it was making me shudder and vibrate, and they call that a consummation, or in the mystery, it's called the wedding, marriage. And this fish then, and then it just disappeared. And I will say that apparently this way it was done like vibrations. It was I was being converted via vibrations from this fish, this dolphin. Then after that, there's some other things happen, but I will tell you that in there, I've worked it out. The exact place that I was in the Queen's Chamber, and the Queen's Chamber is called the Mother's Womb, and she has 2 shafts, and the King's Chamber has 2 shafts, and they both have a north shaft and a south shaft. And this was the south shaft. It has to be, because the south shaft is pointing to Sirius star, the Sirius star, and they have fish on there. So we are 50% fish and via this dolphin stuff, and 50% fish and 50% human from Earth. And so and that is a promise. And I can tell you, because I have here, that there is just something in this book, and this is a Babylonians.
Yep. A lot of their gods are...
There's them keeping... Are they? Really? Really?
A lot of
So,
a lot
and
of the
then
bags you'll
the
see
other,
have like fish tails and bodies.
wow, that is so exciting. I'll just tell you there's another one on that one page. And this one is the Sumerians. See? And they are half fish. I don't know what they got. The bird as well, isn't it? Really on that one.
They do.
That's and then the other thing is that I learned in through research that in Egypt that they have a temple called Hattor's Temple, which is a temple of creation, and it's in Dendera. And inside there, it's exactly in alignment and talking about Sirius in there. So it is saying basically, I mean, we couldn't have it more clearer than that. Temple of creation, and it's all to do with the Sirius star. And the other thing is that they have things in there that next I turn to the temple of Isis at Dendera. One of the most enigmatic temples aligned with the star Sirius is the Temple of Isis, also known as Hathor, and it's called Temple of Hathor. And Isis is Hathor, the same thing, but they have like shape shifting, really, role playing, and Dendera. So in here in Hathor's temple, you can see that there are two fish as well. Let's have a look at it.
There it is.
See the fish?
Yeah.
So that is, and also they have a fish that is going around something to do. I can't remember the fish has got a name, but anyway, that's fine. And I can't remember its name now. There's another one, and then here is Hathor. No, sorry. This. And you see she's got gills for her ears. They're gills. They're not ears.
You know, I've never noticed that, but you're right.
Yep, she's got gills for her ears. I don't think anybody's noticed them, but of course I'm looking in there for things, the same. And that is, why did you go in there? No. So those are gills, and she herself is actually telling us that. And the other thing is, I'm just telling you these things. What do you notice about their eyes? They always do those sort of things, don't they? Their eyes, they're like fish. Are they trying to tell us something on our face? And do you not think that they're like these aliens as well? It's all to do with eyes. Even the aliens, they have these big eyes. But this, to me, they always do them with their makeup and stuff like that. It's like fish.
Yeah. I see it, and I've often wondered that myself, why like Osiris had the fish look to the eyes is the most prevalent, and he had the blue skin, which was also remnant of being in the water.
Who's this? Sorry, which one?
Osiris.
Osiris, yes, absolutely. Yes, he's the god of the underworld, isn't he? And he came down with a crash and started life here. And that's all in my book as well. I will just tell you this bit then, and then so don't let me tell you, I must tell you about Jesus at the end. So just one bit. So anyway, so that's my experience. And even the Great Pyramid, as basically hinting, if they can't hint any louder and clearer, to have a shaft that is pointing exactly as Sirius out of the 4 shafts, you know, that means that it's important to them as well. And it is, you know, if that's the sort of thing that happened to me, is it going to happen? You know, it's a way to get the vibrations in that Queen's chamber. So the carvings and it says the pictures I've showed you. So yes, it's possible to have created a water-based civilization created by non-humans. This is not fiction. This is fact. And we weren't built by other regions. So another fictional example for civilization from the stars then is, so that one is a civilization from the stars that's come down, is Larry Niven 1980 short story, The Green Marauder, whereby an alien over 700 million years old, due to relativistic travel, relates to a human about the last time it visited Earth and the hopeless plea from Earth's absence of free oxygen, relating to or requiring a civilization for help against the growing environmental threat of chlorophyll. The hypothesis forms the basis for some version of the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis explaining the existence of UFOs. The crypto-terrestrial hypothesis proposes that reports of flying saucers or UFOs are evidence of a hidden Earth-based, technologically advanced civilization. Could this be possible? And where would they be to keep an eye on us as well? Well, and this is the last bit, apart from Jesus' bit, little bit. According to Robert Temple, he says, and it's in my book in a way as well, he says the universe is over 99% plasma. So that gives us, on the material, atoms and stuff like that, 1% chance of any more like us, really, if you like, because our atoms matter. So he's saying the universe is over 99% plasma. He says that we have seen that dusty complex plasma interacting with electromagnetic fields can evolve sufficient complexity to count as alive. We have seen too, in certain cases, that complex dusty plasma contains such high levels of complexity, including quantum phenomena, that it may reasonably be speculated that they are also intelligent. The Kordylewski clouds hovering over the Earth might well be vastly more intelligent than human beings, or indeed all human beings put together, including all of those who have ever lived. So vast are the potential computing powers of the huge clouds, which together are 9 times the size of the Earth, so that in size they dwarf our planet and its moon. We have seen that plasma may be a medium by which the bizarre behavior of particles and waves in the quantum realm may erupt into the human or macro realm, for example, in the manifestation of lightning balls. It says that the quest has only just begun. Once you grasp this, you can begin to realize what we really are. So is that where they come from? What is that where they're looking down at us all the time, so close between the Earth and the Moon and on those clouds, and as big as what they are, 6 times or something? So it's a thought, isn't it? Is that where they live? Is that where they put themselves so that they can get, and close to us? But it's definitely to do with the next era. And I just want to say one thing that is really important out of all of it. Did I get to find out about God? And I think I have. And there's just one thing. Jesus came into the into the king's chamber, and I saw him the first time that he was in there. He showed me his hands, and they had just still have the wounds from the thing in the hands where he's taken off the cross. And so there was the resurrected Christ in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And he said to me lots of things which you'll find in the book, but the most important things that he said to me was, this is his knowledge. In other words, he said, this is my knowledge. The Great Pyramid is where he got all his knowledge from. This is his knowledge. This is his wisdom. And he's begging us to understand all about it. And to this will move the new era in as well. And he says other things, but it's definitely time that we all get together and relook where we want to find the root of why we're here and where we come from and where we're going to go from here. Then that's all in the initiation ceremony. You get to understand and to know all those things and what happens after. Thank you for having me, Michael. But what do you say about that?
Well, what I find interesting is you're talking about Jesus, being in the king's chamber, and a lot of people don't realize, because according to the Catholic Church, we have the little boy Jesus, and then we have the 33-year-old Jesus with nothing in between. And what happened in between is he was in Egypt, he was in Greece, he was in India. I mean, he was traveling the world. And so it is very possible and most likely probable that he did step foot in the king's chamber and was in the Great Pyramid with his studies and learnings. And so I wasn't sure if you were aware of his worldly travels between the scriptures. And so there, that's some, validation for you as well. And I think that what amazes me too is when you look at the symbology of the gods, as we're talking about being like fish, Ra is always pictured as being on a boat in heaven and the stars above, bringing the sun and keeping the worm or the devourer at bay. Well, if you look at the symbology of that, a boat is sailing on water. And so therefore, there's another connection to like the fish aspect, and the world was created out of water. And so there's that as well. And it just is so interesting to me. And like Pisces is the symbol is the two fish in unity, where it's really the only water sign that has the fish. And I've often wondered, with every representation, one, why is Pisces the two fish, not just one? Because the Catholics use the one fish. And of all the water signs, why none of the others are aquatic animals? And so that's, something to look into too. While
I would say yes, absolutely. But when you think Jesus is very much shape-shifting a lot, to me, well, that's a big story, but that's about Jesus. But he's definitely not, all human all the time, if you like. He is. I also did going up the Grand Gallery, pass the baton, that through history. So Jesus is for us now, but years ago it was Horus. they're the same children, they do and say the same things through history. So it's like passing the baton through history, really, to keep it going. And the reason to keep it going is to get people, the time is right now. And I don't know, somebody was saying yesterday somewhere, something's going to happen in 2026 and it's to do with Jesus. But I will say that was what I was told, to write it down and let it out, and to say that is Jesus's knowledge. And that's where his wisdoms come from. And we've got to start looking in the right places to get us out of this mess.
So where can people find and get a hold of your book?
It's on Amazon, and it's with my name, Jan Hann, and it's called The Great Pyramid of Giza. The initiation ceremony Hall of Records is inside us. When you do the initiation ceremony, you realize that you've already had it inside us for a long time, in your consciousness, if you like. And that's exactly what happens with the initiation ceremony. A lot of your consciousness is broadened, opened, wider. It's ready, preparing for, to us learn more about above. I mean, you can see it's being drawn in all the time, really. This planet, we just don't know who we are, where we are, and what we are, really. It's really time for a change, and this is it. Just going back with fish, the fish in the Bible, there's a lot with Jesus, a lot to do with fish, isn't it? His disciples were fishers of men, and some of the parables, he's trying hard to talk about. And yes, absolutely, in Galilee.
So I just shared the link to your book so people can find it hopefully faster. And so thank you for sharing this with us, and thank you for sharing your experience in writing it, and so people can read it today, tomorrow, in the future. So blessings to you for doing that. And I just want to say to you, my heart and the heart of my shows to you, thank you for sharing this.
Thank you very much for having me, Michael. You're welcome. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope, that it will keep people thinking anyway, start them thinking into something. Maybe they've had part of some of these things that have happened to me, and they just wondered why and what, and maybe it will help them understand, that it's real, and you're getting a message put out over you, for start thinking about something else. That's what I want, really, is a lot of people to maybe, if I hadn't have seen all of you, I wouldn't know whether my thing was true or not, and it's it needs to be let out, and it leads people need to know these things, be allowed to know these things, if that's the right thing, so that they can move on with their life.
Exactly. So thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for taking that step. And I wish you a wonderful evening, and I'm going to say wonderful afternoon for everyone here in the States, because we had that lovely 6-hour difference between us here. And so I'm going to say good night to everyone, and do follow along and read her books and follow her on her journey. Follow my shows. You never know where she's going to pop up. And thank you, and blessings to you.
Thank you for having me. See you again, hopefully.
Yes. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Let's try that again.